Larry, one of the things that struck me this week is that the HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, ordered the CDC not to be collecting the data from the hospitals anymore. That data has to go directly to HHS. And as a result, at least thus far, some websites have shut down. What does that tell us, even beyond the coronavirus, more generally about the government response to this pandemic?
We're seeing the kind of state failure, basic breakdown of public functioning that scholars used to use in analyzing developing countries and explaining why they were poor and why they stayed poor and why they weren't able to push their economies forward and raise the life expectancy of their people. Analyses that people thought of as relevant to understanding failed governance in some of the poorest countries in the world now look relevant in the United States. A government that is legitimate is central to a healthy society. And for a government to be perceived as legitimate, it has to be minimally competent in dealing with threats to its citizenry. And ours of late has not been. And shutting down the flow of information to an institution like the Center for Disease Control is of a piece with withdrawing from the WHO, of a piece with saying that masks are a terrible thing, of a piece with recommending that people inject themselves with disinfectant. It is the stuff that one associates with the poorest and least functional societies in the world, not the world's reigning superpower. And more than any specific tactical decision, this breakdown in the functioning of federal governance is, I think, what is most troubling to me as I think about the country's future. The president has been beyond bad, and many of the people he has appointed have been beyond bad. But this has been coming for a long time in the unwillingness of our political leaders to adequately fund basic functions of government. Why should it be that we're only able to audit half as many tax returns of wealthy people as we were a decade ago? Why should it be that in the United States there are any bridges that collapse? Why should it be that American children lost IQ because they drank lead water with lead in it because that's what their government told them to do? I think that beyond the ideological debates about policy, central to the American project has to be reviving the basic competence of our government.
So, Larry, you've raised questions before about the competence of the U.S. government. If the U.S. government's not getting it done to your satisfaction, is there strength in numbers? We have the G20 finance ministers going to meet under the auspices of the chairmanship of Saudi Arabia over the weekend. They're going to reportedly try to come up with a way of really shoring up the global economy. Do you have high hopes for that?
I'd be tempted to call it a train wreck, but a train wreck is a more significant event than this meeting is going to be. Thanks to America moving from its usual role of an initiator and a leader of policy in the G20 to being a blocker of progress, we're not going to see serious discussion of providing financial assistance to poor countries that are in desperate condition. We're not going to see cooperation and agreement in how we're going to handle the global distribution of a vaccine. We're not going to see cooperation on taxing the world's richest companies that locate their income in cyberspace and don't pay any taxes. We're not going to see progress in, even though it's less in the headlines because of COVID, what is an epically important problem, climate change. we're not going to see serious discussion of what the role of the dollar in the international system is going to be at a time when there have been things that some people think of as abuse of the dollar's power and that others resent very much. None of the important global issues that it's the job of finance ministers to discuss are going to see genuinely serious discussion and any meaningful progress. David, I think when historians go back and write about this moment, one of the themes they are going to pick up is that in the economic area, it was a moment of extraordinary activity. Budget deficits, central banks lending money to everybody in sight, that it was a moment of extraordinary activity in response to COVID. But in the international area, it was a moment of staggering passivity. That's very different than in 2008, when with Gordon Brown's leadership and President Obama's leadership at the London summit, it was international energy matching very strong domestic efforts. And that's the fault of everybody involved. But given its traditional role, I think the United States is going to be blamed. In many ways, the United States is acting like a declining power in the same way that Britain acted as abdicated responsibility during the Depression period.